Williamsburg, one of America's first permanent cities, where laws were made, where battles were fought, and where revolutions took place. Today I'm going to talk about Williamsburg, Virginia, also known as Colonial Williamsburg. I'm going to talk about some specific years in Williamsburg history. I am not going to talk about everything that has ever happened in Williamsburg. That would take me days and days to do. I'm just going to hit on some specific years of things that I feel like were important that happened in Williamsburg. If I missed something that you think is important that happened in Williamsburg, drop it in the comments, let us know what year it happened, and we can all go back and read it later. I try to keep these history lessons short and sweet, so I limit what I talk about, but it's also something that maybe will open your eyes and be like, hey, I want to go research more about this topic, which if that happens, I absolutely love that for you. So let's dive into the history of Williamsburg. 1632. So in 1632, English settlers would found Williamsburg as Middle Plantation. It was a fortified settlement on a higher ground above the James and York rivers. It was further inland than their headquarters at the time, which was Jamestown, which I have a video on Jamestown and you should go check it out. So 1632 is when Williamsburg, or as known then, Middle Plantation, was originally settled. In 1662, John Page would construct the first brick home in Middle Plantation. So as you can see from this picture I'm posting right now, a piece of that home was found, and it looks like it's like the cornerstone that would show a P for Page, and then you see an A for Alice, which was his wife. They could not find the J, and then 1662, which was the year the house was built. I think this was an awesome find, especially being from 1662. I love when archaeologists find pieces of history like this. So in 1676, things for Williamsburg are really going to start changing. So Jamestown had been the capital of the Virginia colony, and it would be burned during Bacon's Rebellion. And so while the State House was being rebuilt in Jamestown, they moved everything to Williamsburg. And the men in the House of Burgesses were like, we really like Williamsburg. It's not as humid, there's not as many mosquitoes. So they really enjoyed their time they spent in Williamsburg while the State House was being rebuilt in Jamestown. By 1693, the State House has been rebuilt in Jamestown, and all of the members of the House of Burgesses are back in Jamestown doing government work. But the College of William and Mary is now going to be established, and it is the second oldest institution of higher learning in the United States because it is still in operation today. So the College of William and Mary is going to be established. They're going to build new buildings in the town. You're going to have some famous political leaders emerge from the College of William and Mary, such as Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, John Tyler. They will all go to the College of William and Mary. So the Wren building, which was constructed on campus, was constructed between 1695 and 1700, and it is still there today. 1699 is the year everything changes. So in 1699, Williamsburg will be established as the capital of the Virginia colony, moving it from Jamestown. College students from the College of William and Mary would make a presentation to the House of Burgesses about why Williamsburg should be the capital. The House of Burgesses members accepted their presentation, they listened, and they really liked what they heard. They voted on it, and they chose to move the capital to Williamsburg. The name was changed from Middle Plantation to Williamsburg after King William III. Once the decision to move the capital from Jamestown to Williamsburg was decided, now they needed to make renovations to the city of Williamsburg. They needed to build a capitol. They needed to build buildings. They needed to build houses. And so everything had to be planned out. And Williamsburg is actually one of America's first planned out cities. So Theodoric, I hope I'm saying his name right, Bland, came in and surveyed the land. And under the supervision of Governor Francis Nicholson, they laid out this plan of what they wanted the city to look like. Part of their plan was having the new capitol on one end of the city and the college on the other end of the city, which would be connected with Duke of Gloucester Street, which is still there today, and you can walk down the street. I'll show you some pictures of that later. It's awesome. And so they wanted the city to be connected, to be laid out, to be a functioning place for people to live. Over the next few years, they would build the Capitol building, they would build a new jail, they would build other public and private buildings. They were really trying to make the city the best they could. In 1704, the first Capitol building would be completed in Williamsburg, and the General Assembly would begin meeting there regularly. In 1710, Alexander Spotswood is going to arrive in Virginia as lieutenant governor, and he's really going to work with getting the city finished. He's going to have streets leveled. He's going to help get additional college buildings built. He's going to get additional churches built. He's going to get a magazine built to store arms and ammunition. He's also going to help finish the construction of the governor's palace because he needed someplace to live. The city is going to continue to grow and grow, and in 1736, Virginia's first newspaper would be published in Williamsburg, known as the Virginia Gazette, and it would be printed by William Parks. In 1747, the Capitol building would burn down to its foundation, and a new Capitol building would be built based off the plans of the old one, and it would be completed in 1753. Moving into 1765. So Williamsburg is thriving, they're making laws, they're having their city, they're living. And then Patrick Henry is going to give his famous Stamp Act speech at the Williamsburg Capitol. This speech was against the Stamp Act that the British were implementing in the colonies, saying that everything had to have a stamp and that stamp was going to be taxed, and now you're paying more taxes to the British. And a lot of the colonists were not in favor of the Stamp Act, and Patrick Henry would give this really powerful speech that really made the people of Virginia be like, why are we accepting all these things that the British are doing to us? We need to fight back. The House of Burgesses would adopt Patrick Henry's condemnation of the Stamp Act, and the city saw its own Stamp Act protests on Duke of Gloucester Street, just as Stamp Act protests were happening all around the colonies at the time, especially in like Boston. In 1771, Governor John Murray, the 4th Earl of Dunmore, would arrive in Williamsburg. He's also going to be known as Lord Dunmore, and that is what I'm going to refer to him as, and that when I teach about Lord Dunmore in my history class at school, that is how I refer to him, as Lord Dunmore. So Lord Dunmore is going to become governor of Virginia. He's going to take over. He's going to start making some rules, and not everybody is going to agree with all the things that he decides to do. 1774 is really going to start the ball rolling with some big changes in Williamsburg. So Lord Dunmore is going to dissolve the General Assembly after they passed a resolution in support of the city and the residents of Boston after the Boston Tea Party protests. And Lord Dunmore did not agree with this. Lord Dunmore did not agree with the Boston Tea Party protests. He did not agree with the resolution that the city passed. And so he dissolved the General Assembly. So what did the members in the House of Burgesses do? They started meeting at Raleigh's Tavern on Duke of Gloucester Street, and they would meet in other private and public buildings around the city, and they would elect delegates during these meetings to attend the First Continental Congress in Philadelphia. 1775 is going to be the gunpowder incident, and this would begin in April of 1775. So this would happen because there was a dispute between Lord Dunmore and the Virginia colonists over the gunpowder that was being stored in the Williamsburg magazine. Dunmore feared rebellion from the colonists, so he ordered the Royal Marines to seize the gunpowder from the magazine and take it out of the city. The Virginia militia, which was led by Patrick Henry at the time, felt like this was theft, and they marched on Williamsburg. There would be a standoff between Lord Dunmore's people and the militia led by Patrick Henry, and it would be resolved with a payment for the powder. But this was really going to be an important predecessor to the run-up of the American Revolution. The people in Williamsburg are now seeing, hey, there are people in the government that's being ran by Britain, who we don't feel like have our best interests in mind. So what are we going to do about it? 1776, a year that all Americans know. And in Virginia in 1776, the Virginia Convention would pass a resolution urging the Continental Congress to declare independence from Britain in Williamsburg. We know that in 1776, we would declare our independence from Great Britain, and the Virginia Convention was a big part of making that decision to declare independence. 1780 is going to be another big year for Williamsburg because in 1780, they are going to move the capital of Virginia to Richmond, and Williamsburg's importance is going to decline. Then Governor Thomas Jefferson felt that Williamsburg was vulnerable to British attacks and felt that Richmond, the area of Richmond, was a safer place. So in 1780, they would move the capital from Williamsburg to Richmond. Once they moved the capital, the city really started to decline. People moved out of the city just as they did when they moved the capital from Jamestown to Williamsburg. The city kind of went down. Nothing really big happened in the city until the Battle of Williamsburg in 1862. 1862, you would see the Battle of Williamsburg, and it took place on May 5th in York County, James County City, and Williamsburg, Virginia, as part of what was called the Peninsula Campaign. The Battle of Williamsburg would be the first pitched battle of the Peninsula Campaign, which nearly 41,000 Union and 32,000 Confederate troops would engage during this battle. Both sides would kind of claim victory in the battle, but it is seen as a turning point in the Peninsula Campaign, especially for the Union troops. So soldiers under Winfield S. Hancock would capture their first Confederate battle flag during the Battle of Williamsburg, and this was seen as like a really remarkable point in this battle during the Civil War. Much of the area that the Battle of Williamsburg was fought on has been lost to development, but the American Battlefield Trust and its partners have acquired and preserved more than 343 acres of this original battlefield from 2010 up to today, and they are still working to preserve more and more of the battlefield. And in 2023, they actually acquired a plot of land that part of the battle was fought on for $9.4 million, making it the second most expensive private battlefield land acquisition in American history. So they are really trying to get as much of the battlefield from that battle as they can, preserve it, and be able to turn it into a historical site. Moving up to 1881, you're going to have Collis P. Huntington's Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, also known as the C&O, would be built through this area. And it would establish 6 stations in the Williamsburg area and the surrounding area. And this is going to allow people to start coming into Williamsburg again. The train track coming through Williamsburg was really good news for farmers and merchants in the area because they're going to now be able to send their stuff to other places. They're going to be able to make money. They're going to be able to reach out farther. They're also going to be able to get goods from other places that they maybe had harder times getting. So the railroad coming to Williamsburg really helped the city. But 1923 is going to be the year that Williamsburg's history changes for the better. Why is 1923 important to Williamsburg? That is because of Reverend Dr. W.A.R. Goodwin. Goodwin would set out and would be a champion for one of the nation's largest historical restorations, and I don't even think he realized what he was doing at the time. In 1907, Goodwin had helped restore the Burton Parish Church, I hope I'm saying that right, in Williamsburg. He wanted it to be restored for the 300th anniversary of the founding of the Episcopal Church in Virginia, and he really worked hard to restore that church. But when he returned to Williamsburg in 1923, he realized that a lot of the other remaining colonial era buildings were deteriorating. They were not being taken care of. And he was like, why is this historic city falling apart? So he is going to do what he in his power can do to save the city, but to be able to do that, he's going to have to call in some reinforcements. In 1924, he calls in reinforcements, and those reinforcements are John D. Rockefeller Jr. and Abby Rockefeller. And he gets with the Rockefellers to do this huge restoration and revitalization of Williamsburg. With the help of the Rockefellers, Goodwin was able to get back up to approximately 85% of the capital's original area. They bought land, they bought buildings, and they are now going to take that land and take those buildings and restore them. Restore them as much as possible to what Williamsburg would have looked like in the 1700s. They would work throughout the late 20s, and in 1932, Colonial Williamsburg opened its first exhibition building, a reconstructed Raleigh Tavern. In 1934, the hostesses working at the reconstruction of the tavern would start wearing period apparel in honor of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's visit for the dedication of Duke of Gloucester Street. So you've got like the presidents involved, and you've got all these people that are coming to Williamsburg because they're like, look at all this restoration that's happening. Let's go see what's going on in this town. During the 1930s, the first crafts were being reintroduced into Williamsburg to show visitors how things were made. Cabinet making, blacksmithing, silversmithing. They also did things such as wig making and candle making. They wanted to give people that experience of here is how things were built, how things were made during colonial Williamsburg. By the end of the 1960s, the Rockefellers had supported colonial Williamsburg's restoration efforts with more than $80 million. $80 million in the 1960s is more like $800 million today. So that's a lot of money that the Rockefellers put into helping support colonial Williamsburg. In the 1970s, costume interpreters started telling stories of colonial Williamsburg. It was a way to depict people of all genders, classes, and races. And at the time, it was considered like groundbreaking street theater. 2007, Queen Elizabeth II is going to visit Williamsburg, which I think is really funny because like Williamsburg was one of the cities that was like, hey, we need to break away from Britain. And now you have the Queen of England coming to visit. Today, Colonial Williamsburg is Virginia's largest tourist attraction by attendance and is part of the historical triangle, which includes Jamestown and Yorktown, which are all joined by the Colonial Parkway. I absolutely love Williamsburg. I went in 5th grade, but then last year, me and my husband took our son to Williamsburg, and I just love the history of the city. We saw an amazing street interpreter of George Washington, and the speech he gave was just so powerful and impacting. And walking around the city and seeing what city life was like, we did a nighttime ghost tour of the city. It is amazing. I love the city of Williamsburg. If you have never been to Williamsburg, you should definitely give it a go. Visit Williamsburg. You can also visit Jamestown and Yorktown while you're there. Do the historic triangle. But it is definitely something that I think all Americans, it's some place I think all Americans should go at least once in their life. If you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more videos like this one, please like, subscribe, and comment below with something you learned today.